For those of you that weren't at our meeting on Wednesday, our guest speaker, his name is Tony Youngs. He's going to teach us about finding deals where others don't. So let's welcome Tony Youngs to the front.
Tony! Thank you. All right. How about a hand for Tim? All right. Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
You know, I had these two friends that were real estate investors, and one of them told each other, they said, if any of us die, I want you to get a message from heaven telling us if there's real estate investing up in heaven. And one of them finally died, and he did get a message back to his partner. He said, yes, there is. I've got good news and bad news. There is real estate investing up in heaven. He goes, great. What's the bad news? He goes, well, you're scheduled to be at a closing next Thursday.
That's a good Oh boy.
Well, so we're going to learn about the hidden market today. First of all, I want to give a hand to Marcia and Tim and the whole gang for making all this possible. Let's give a hand to them. I am a firm believer in real estate investors associations because you have to be around like-minded people. You have to be around people that are constantly encouraging you and giving you ideas and giving you the strength to keep working at it, because out there are brothers and sisters and husbands and wives and relatives. They're always saying, that stuff doesn't work, you're wasting your time. And it does work. It is the highest paying job that you could ever get, in my opinion. Because I had a good job at Lockheed, making good money. And I ended up having to quit because real estate was paying 10 times the amount of money that Lockheed was, and I thought I had arrived when I got a job at Lockheed. I thought that's good money. But I made a year's wages on my first real estate deal compared to Lockheed. And it took a whole year to make that much money at Lockheed, but it took 88 days to make that much money at this one deal. So I just kept doing it over and over. Once you do a deal, you just continue to repeat the process, but you get better and better and better at it. The reason Tiger Woods was so good at golf, he just kept playing, and he just kept getting better and better. Same with all types of people that are successful. And you keep doing real estate, you're just going to get better and better, and it will build wealth. It's not like they show on TV where, you do a deal and you're walking down the beach after your limousine drops you off and you've flown to a certain beach in your own personal Learjet. That hasn't happened to me, but I definitely have built wealth through buying, flipping, and owning real estate. How many of you already own rental properties in your portfolio? Well, there's no better business in the world to own a bunch of houses that someone else is buying for you. How many cars could you own that someone else will make the payments for you? Nobody. So houses, it's amazing that you can own a lot of houses, but other people pay the payments. It is just amazing. But we like money today, don't we? So a lot of today, I'm going to show you how you can start generating monthly income, not off rentals, but off buying and selling deals. So I did the last 3 houses that I fixed up, I made over $100,000 profit. And there's nobody that I know in my area making those kind of profits, because they buy their houses at auctions, they buy their houses through real estate agents, but I buy mine through the hidden market. So therefore, I'm buying a house that no one else knows about, so no one's competing with me, and I'm getting better prices. You've always heard that the real wealth is built by getting, when you first buy the deal, but then I know there's probably a lot of agents in the room But I use agents to sell my houses after I fix them up because they get multiple offers. But when I'm buying, I don't want to be one of the multiple offers to buy a house. So I don't buy through MLS or real estate agents because everybody knows about it. What I'm going to show you today is how to find deals with no for sale signs. They're not on the MLS. There's no ads in the paper. They're not on Craigslist. As a matter of fact, for those of you that buy certain types of lists to send letters to, these properties aren't even on those lists. So here's the deal. Every weekend, I plot a course of properties to go out and see. But these are not hidden markets. But when I go see these properties, I find 30 hidden market distressed houses with no for sale signs. Now, the thing I want to point out, how many of you buy a list and mail to it? Like say a list of absentee owners. Anybody do that? All right. How about a list of, say, probate properties? Do you buy lists for those? Those are all good. I've done all those too. But this list that I'm going to teach you how to get, you're the only one that has that list, so you're the only one sending letters to this list. And these are all distressed real estate deals that you can buy below market value because they're distressed. And some have distressed owners, which is a plus. But when if you made a low investor offer on a house that needed no work, what's the chances on getting that accepted? So I'm a firm believer in finding homes that need work so that I can get a good deal. And I'm going to be showing you some pictures this morning of what you need to look for. And I guarantee you're going to start thinking, I've seen houses like that, but I never thought to stop or pursue those. They're in every neighborhood. I want to show you, well, first of all, I want to show you this video of someone who got it. This was a girl, she was a nurse working full-time, and her husband was a doctor. And this is Phoenix, Arizona. And she took this class at a time when Phoenix, Arizona was moving up so rapidly after the crisis that it was virtually impossible to get a good deal because every house on the MLS got 32 offers. So you have to overpay to get the deal. You have to be at or above asking price, and you have to be above all those other 31 offers. So she did 28 deals in 3 years. And that's why she's on Good Morning America. So I just want to take a minute and show you this video just to give you some encouragement.
Renovating and reselling homes can be a big business, and ABC's Rebecca Jarvis got one expert's secret to turning that fixer-upper into cash.
It's 9 a.m. in Tempe, Arizona. This modest 3-bedroom home is being completely gutted. The person calling the shots. This mom of 5 and former nurse, Maria Giordano. She's a full-time real estate investor employing bold new strategies in the ever-competitive world of flipping. How many houses have you flipped?
28 homes now.
On reality TV, they do it under a tight timeline.
We're 25 days into our 30-day flip.
But that's not how you make the most money these days.
People want what the Joneses have. There isn't the soccer mom of old who, would come in the t-shirts and not care. She wants that sexy kitchen.
The clock is ticking on her newest project.
Our net gain on this property is probably going to be about $35,000.
Her first tip, hunt for the right home. If they spot something they like, they send a letter.
I think I sent out 50 letters this week.
Which brings us to tip number 2. Never fall in love with the property.
How competitive is the market? We're very competitive now just because our inventory is down. You can have, I think I heard the other day, 32 offers on one property. really yourself. You need to have a team around you. It's not a one-person show.
You are not only treating this as your livelihood, this is also about revitalizing neighborhoods.
I want to leave a positive mark on that community, and I want people to love my houses. But every time I sell a home, it's kind of sad because I put so much into that house, and I picked out those finishes, and I just really want people to love it.
Flipping it forward, one house at a time. For Good Morning America, Rebecca Jarvis, ABC News, Phoenix.
And I think we decided that's a special skill to flip a house, and only Amy has it at this
Okay, so what I want to show you,
live in the houses when I'm flipping it, not
now, you would think, you're probably sitting there thinking, oh, well, that's great. You know, all the money she's spending, somehow she's got the money to do it. I could do that too if I had the money. Well, she didn't have the money. Let me show you something real quick. This is one of the letters I got from her. But what she did is she was a nurse with 5 kids, and she had a newborn. And she still made it big. That's why she was on Good Morning America. They're going like, whoa, this lady is super mom. I mean, she's got 5 kids, a newborn, and she still goes out and does deals. And I know some people, if they break a fingernail, they say, oh, I can't go find deals. So,
You can do
You're picking on me, champ. Yeah.
it. You'll do it.
oh, man. All right, just hang with me. Here it is. All right, so this is one of the things I got from her back in 2012 after she took my training. It says, I've quit my job. That's the subject line. It says, hi, Tony. I've been so afraid to quit my job and do real estate full-time that I went part-time for a month. However, Gary and I, her husband, have so many houses under contract and undergoing rehabs that I need to dedicate this as my full-time business. So Friday, I quit my job. The most amazing and scary thing is we now have other people giving us their money to partner with on these deals. Just today, I had an investor give me $170,000 to buy and rehab a house. This includes the fee I now charge for finding the deal, then I split the profits with the investor. I never would have imagined other people would actually give me their money to do these deals. Now, here's why they give her the money. Because people with money, they have plenty of money, but they can't find deals. They just can't really find good deals. If I gave everybody in this class right now, if I gave you $200,000 cash, and I said, meet me back here tomorrow with a great deal, you probably couldn't do it. Because you'd probably contact an agent and say, bring me deals to invest in, I got the money. Or you'd go to a foreclosure auction and try to bid against all the other investors. So it would be hard for you to bring me a good deal. The kind that we're going to make tons of profit. Okay? So money is not the problem. Finding deals is the problem. So my goal for you today is to make you an expert at finding deals. That's why Maria has everybody with money wanting to give her money. They're all saying, you're good at finding them, so here, I've got money, I want to partner with you. So, or they want to buy the houses from you. So if you just want to wholesale them to people like that, you can. They will buy your deals because you're going to find better deals than everybody else. And they won't know how to access them because you have to go out and find them. You are the only one with this list. And if you do this twice a month or 3 times a month, that list keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And people will want to buy your list because these are good deals. I'll prove it today. All right? Now, and then a couple of years later, I got an email from her husband. And it says, Tony, my wife Maria and I have done 22 deals since we did our training with you in Phoenix. Thank you so much for kick-starting us. And then, of course, she ends up on Good Morning America. And they wouldn't put me on Good Morning America because I'm not Supermom, you know? I mean, I've done deals too, so why not me? It's because she has 5 kids, she was a nurse, and she still managed to do this. And, you know, there's just something about it. I mean, that's a feature story on a show like Good Morning America. They also did a big TV show, a whole hour with her, on a show called Nightline. Have you ever heard of a TV show called Nightline?
Yes.
So that's the more extended version. But did you notice she drives around? She plots a course and she drives around to look for deals, and she writes down addresses of distressed houses with no for sale signs. Now you see this area, and I've plotted 10 properties in foreclosure. Now, anybody who ever was in the foreclosure business, your quest as a foreclosure investor is to find out who is going into foreclosure before it becomes public. That's what every foreclosure investor wants to know, because everybody in the world, once it becomes public, everybody knows about it. And these people in foreclosure get 40 letters from people wanting to buy their homes. They also get 30 letters from attorneys telling them to file bankruptcy. And then they get 40 letters from government agencies saying, hey, maybe we can refinance your home or something. But they have all these options of people wanting to buy their homes. But it's always been my quest to find who is going into foreclosure. Because here's why it's your quest. Because you can work this one area, and every month there's 10 new properties in foreclosure. And then you look at all those, and then 2 weeks later there's 10 more. So obviously there's people in this same area that aren't in foreclosure yet, but they'll probably be in foreclosure someday, 6 months down the road. How do we find those people? Well, that's why I started looking for distressed houses. If I went to a foreclosure, that may not be a great deal. But if I drive the neighborhood, I start looking for signs of people who I think might be the next person who might be having issues. Now, what is the real cause of foreclosure? It's loss of job, loss of income, someone died in the family, going through a divorce. Those are the reasons that you will always have a hidden market. You see, every neighborhood has people going through those type of issues: divorce, loss of job, getting transferred, death in the family. Every neighborhood has it. But we don't know who those are. They don't put a sign in the yard saying, hey, I'm going through one of those things. So you've got to figure out how to tell if someone like that. And that's how I discovered the hidden market. Because I started knocking on doors of every distressed house in a neighborhood. And I would just ask them. There's 3 things that I say. So get ready to write these down. If I just see an ugly house or a house with no pride of ownership, I just walk up and knock on the door and I say, hi, I'm looking to buy a home in this neighborhood and I wanted to know, would you be interested in selling yours? If they say no, I say, do you know anybody else in this neighborhood who's thinking about or might be interested in selling? So even if the person does not want to sell their home, they will usually tell you someone who might be interested in selling. You'd be surprised how they may say, oh, you might want to talk to John over there. He's going through a divorce. Or you might want to talk to Bob over here because he just lost his job. Or you might want to talk to Sally because her husband just passed away. I hear that all the time. And that is why this list is so big every weekend. Because every door I knock on, I ask them for other people that might want to sell. Now, here's a third question. I say, do you know any vacant or abandoned homes in the neighborhood? And sometimes they'll say stuff like, no, the only ones I know of are those three. And they'll point across the street. I'll say, what do you mean? There's cars in the driveway. Oh, yeah, those are neighbors' cars. We park and we cut the grass so people don't know they're vacant. But you find, I would have never known those were vacant because there was cars in the driveway and things. But it was because I knocked on someone's door and they told me about it. So every weekend I do that. Now, some of you are very intellectual. And you say, I'm too good to knock on doors. Or, I'm too smart to have to knock on doors. Or, I'm just not a door knocker. I'm not a vacuum cleaner salesman. You know, that's okay. If you really are as smart as you think you are, you would hire someone to do your door knocking for you. And you sit at home while they tell you everybody that gave you a lead or said yes, make me an offer. Now, I have fun doing it. I could hire people. I have hired people to do my door knocking for me. But I enjoy it. And that's what keeps my knife sharpened. Because I have knocked on a minimum of 40 doors per month for 30 years. Do you think I know what to say to the people? If someone gets a little upset, do you think I know how to diffuse a situation? Do you know I've only remembered twice getting cussed out after 30 years? So really, I find people are more afraid of us than we are of them. And here's other little things that I could teach you. If you're afraid to knock on a door and ask someone, would you be interested in selling your house? Knock on the door and say, hey, do you know what's going on with this house across the street? Maybe it's listed. Do you know how much they're asking for that house? I called and nobody's returned my call yet, but I'm very curious. And that gets the conversation going. And then you say, yeah, I sure would like to live in this great neighborhood. Gosh, I'm having such a hard time finding a house. Do you know anybody that might be interested in selling? So you can beat around the bush if you want. There's so many ways. You know, when I was a foreclosure investor, I used to dress up in a Domino's pizza uniform. And I would go up with a pizza box and say, hey, here's your pizza. They say, we didn't order a pizza. Oh, it must be the wrong house. But what a beautiful house it is. Would you like to sell it? Now, that's how I'd go to foreclosures. But anyway, no, I didn't do that. But here's another thing. I find if you knock on doors of foreclosures, a lot of times they're home, but they will not answer the door. So I painted my car to say Publishers Clearinghouse, and now they answer the door when I come pulling up. You know? Okay, another thing. Yes.
Do you look for any certain type of neighborhood that
Well,
you go to, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. His question is, folks, do I look for any certain type of neighborhood? Well, I like to deal in neighborhoods where I know everybody can afford it. Like, for instance, if I want to wholesale the house to another investor, I want to make sure it's the kind of neighborhood that investor likes. And they like some that they pay cash, so if I went to $1 million neighborhood, they're probably not going to have $1 million cash. So if you want to be a wholesaler, make sure that you do neighborhoods where they can afford to pay cash for the house. Another thing is, what if I decide I want to fix it up and sell it? There's more people that can afford a $100,000 home than they can a $250,000 home. Your mind is saying, oh, I want to do the expensive ones to make more profit. I guarantee you, if you get the right system going, you'll make enough profit, even if it's lower priced homes, because you'll be doing more volume, which keeps you sharp, you know. So I like, in my area, I like anything from 100,000 to 250. But in this area, it's probably 50,000 to, 150 or 185. But here's why. Another thing about a $50,000 neighborhood, and I know there's a lot of them in Ohio, the thing about that is, if you want to wholesale it to another investor, if you don't have the skills to fix up houses, or you don't have the money to keep them as rentals, then you can easily find deals for other investors and wholesale them. So if you wholesale a $50,000 house, they still need sometimes $20,000 in repairs. So the investor is not going to be able to give you a good size fee and have the money to fix it up and make profit. So I think things around 90 to 100,000 is a good target to go for, because that means an investor can buy the house for a price, he can fix it up and do the repairs and give you a fee for finding it. Does that make sense? Because if the lower the price, now it's hard for me to believe. It's hard for you to believe, but I did one in Toledo. I went into a cheap neighborhood, and I got a house under contract for $12,500, and I still had an investor give me $5,500 for that deal. I wholesaled it for $5,500, and it was only a $12,000 house. So I'm really contradicting what I just told you about more expensive neighborhoods. But anyway, I think what you should do is go to an auction. If you can attend a foreclosure auction and see what other investors are buying, you're not going there to buy, you're just going to monitor. If you see other investors bidding on an address, go look at that house, because there's something about it they like. So it'll give you an idea of what other investors are buying, because if you want to be a wholesaler, you've got to find products that they like, find houses they like. So by going to an auction, you learn those things, right? And also you'll learn what areas they don't like. Because when you go to an auction and you ask an investor, hey, I'm sorry you didn't get that one because it was too many people bidding. But what, what do you, is there any area you don't like? And they'll say, oh yeah, the south side. I wouldn't take nothing on the south side. And you can learn that too. When houses go up for auction, either at auction.com or at the regular foreclosure auction, if nobody bids on a house and it appears to be a good deal, then there's something wrong with that area, because investors don't want to bid on that. Now, I was in Tampa, Florida 2 weeks ago, door knocking, and I was with some students, and we went into an area that was just scary. You just sort of felt like you were going to get shot at or whatever. It just looked like a crime neighborhood. And the students were going, let's get out of here. I wouldn't want nothing here anyway. But there were "We buy houses" signs on every telephone pole. Now, what does that tell you? Investors love that area. They would not put bandit signs in that area if they weren't looking for houses in that area. So sometimes our mind screws us. It's not about what we think, it's what do other people like. What does people like to buy? And also, if you ever get stuck with something or feel you've got a fear you're going to get stuck, at least you know you can sell it. So I like neighborhoods like that. I'm sort of elaborated on your question.
No, that's fine. That's
Yeah.
very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. But I'm telling you, the safest thing you could ever do is attend foreclosure auctions, one or two of them, just to see, just to monitor. Because, you know, during the crisis in 2008, there was such a big demand for my training that I was doing more traveling during a crisis when nobody wanted real estate. And it was because I had successful students all over the nation, but they were saying, hey, everything's changed, what do we do now? And I'd say, well, this is what I'm doing, and it's working. And they'd say, I don't know, you need to see my area. So come on out. So I would go out to their areas like in California or Ohio or Chicago, just to see what was going on during the crisis. And we always attended a foreclosure auction first. Here's why. If I went to a foreclosure auction and nobody shows up and they're auctioning off houses and every one of them are going back to the bank, but not one investor shows up, then I don't feel it's safe for you guys to look for deals. As long as people are bidding at foreclosure auctions, there's always a good chance to make money. Because if nothing else, you can find deals for those guys. And that's what I found all over the nation. I think out of all the places I went during the crisis, I only went to one place where nobody showed up at the auction. And I can't remember where that was, but every other place, it was packed with investors buying everything they could at pennies on the dollar. I mean, even the banks, if the opening bid was supposed to be $200,000, they opened the bid at $10,000 just to get those houses sold because they were tired of repossessing them. They didn't want to own all these houses. So the banks were just repossessing houses left and right, and there were investors that had plenty of money, and they were buying everything dirt cheap. And why were they buying them? Because a smart investor knows if you can buy these houses dirt cheap, people always need a place to live and they're going to rent from you. And the rents went higher because people were losing homes or walking away from their homes, but they rented houses and apartments. So therefore, the rents were going up, and that's why smart investors were buying everything they could at these rock bottom prices, and their goal was to rent them out for 7 to 10 years. And then what happened during that 7 to 10 years? They shot up in value again, and now they're very wealthy. Hedge funds, they were doing it. Wall Street were pooling billions of dollars together and going to auctions and buying everything. And as long as you see that happening at a foreclosure auction, it's safe to go out and look for deals. Just remember, you might want to write this down, if you attend 2 or 3 foreclosure auctions and no investors ever show up, then maybe you need to move to Georgia. Okay. I mean, it's just not a safe time to invest. And I wish I could remember where I went, where I think it was someplace in West Virginia, a small town. I went to an auction, and there was just no investors, but they were auctioning off a lot of houses. And with no bidders, they're going back to the banks. So that tells me that is not an area to invest in because there's no market, there's no buyers. You see, as long as there's investors, you have a job. If you went to an auction, you see, because that's what I did, folks. I was afraid to buy and rehab a house in 2008 and 9. And the reason I was, because I knew if I rehabbed a house and listed it on the MLS, nobody was going to buy it. You know why no one was going to buy it? Because the banks weren't giving loans. And if the banks don't give loans, who's going to buy the house other than investors? So by going to the auctions and seeing that investors are wanting deals in this area, I just started wholesaling, just finding deals for investors. But you have to get them under contract, else they can just buy them out from under you. So, and then you get them under contract and you sell, you can wholesale. So you can go ahead and buy them and you can sell them or whatever. All right, so now let me show you what kind of houses we're going to find in these neighborhoods to teach you what a hidden market's all about. Now remember, for those of you that weren't there Wednesday, I said if you plan to assign a contract, the biggest problem you have, not only here in Ohio, but all around the nation, is investors make a big mistake of trying to sell houses they don't own. And that's why the lawmakers, they see these red flags and they say, wait, because you know, that is illegal to sell a house you don't own. So stupid mistakes are investors that will get a house under contract and then they'll put it on Craigslist and try to sell that house. The right way to do it is I have a contract for sale. Just remember, if you ever want to assign a contract, if you do any advertising, you always say contract for sale. Let me give you an example. You see, I usually go down to a foreclosure auction, but I make a flyer of a house that I'm trying to sell. So let me give you an idea of how to do it legally. Do you notice here, it says investor special, contract for sale. It does not say house for sale. Okay? That will keep you legal. Okay? But, you know, once I train you, you won't ever need to advertise. You don't have to put it on Craigslist, because once you get a list of a couple of investors that know that you are good at finding deals, they're going to want to buy from you every time. So therefore, if you find something, you call that investor and say, hey, I've got another one. And that's your whole advertising. So therefore, you can't make a mistake in how you advertise. I'll show you some other ideas in a moment, too. All right. I hate sitting down on the job, folks, but this is what I got to do. Now, you see, a lot of my students, when you get really good at finding deals, you'll get 2 or 3 investors that want first shot at everything you find, like Maria. So if they're afraid you're going to give the deal to a different investor, sometimes investors they'll say, look, could I give you the money up front? And you know, I don't like to get into those type of things because then it makes me feel obligated. But I mean, you have to turn away investors when you're good at finding good deals. Does that make sense? So that's why I try to train people to be the one that finds them. Look at me. 30 years of real estate investing has brought me to this point in my lifetime. Why is that? After 30 years, why am I door knocking? Because I have discovered it's the best way to find good deals, is getting out there and hunting for them. And because I love real estate, I like going out and looking at houses. I like it. If you're a real estate agent, you better learn to like looking at houses, because if you don't like doing it, then you're probably not going to be a successful agent. Same thing with an investor. I have learned to love what I do. Here's what I mean by that. When I first quit my job at Lockheed, I had to knock on doors to get deals. Just sending letters alone was not working for me. It wasn't bringing enough deals to replace my Lockheed income. I did not enjoy knocking on doors for the first year, but I learned to love it. I forced myself to love it. And it was helpful with those big fat checks I was getting. Because you see, if I go door knocking today, there's no guarantee I'm going to make any money. If I went out all day today, there's no guarantee. But 30 days later, if I get a check for $50,000, then I would say, oh, everything I did was worth it. So you have to convince yourself that every time you go out looking, even though there's no guarantee you're going to get paid that day, you have to have faith that what you're doing is going to pay off big time in the future. And it does. That's the way real estate works, in my opinion, is it does work if you're willing to put forth the effort. And that's the problem in some of these rooms. Even my own family members. Now, everybody in my family now, after I got a deal, they were all saying, oh, that stuff doesn't work, you're such a fool, what an idiot. But after I got that first check 88 days later, all those disbelievers in my family said, whoa, how did you do that? Can you show me? And over time, everybody in my family became full-time real estate investors. All my brothers, all my sisters. And then I got married 20 years ago, and my wife's side of the family all started coming to these classes because they wanted to learn, because they kept seeing me wheel big fat checks in and out of the bank, and my wife told them about it, so then they wanted to come. So now they're investors. And in my family tree, there's like 4 millionaires from real estate investing. And one of them lives in Tampa, Florida. And what happened to him is he had a job working for a cigar company, Tampa Nugget Cigars. And the company got sold, so he got some stock out of the sale of that. And he said, I want to invest this money. So he wanted to learn how to invest in real estate. Now he owns tons of rental houses in Tampa and Atlanta. My wife's sister, they have 14 rental houses now from going through this class. But, oh, I got to tell you, that was a funny story. And there's a good lesson here. When I got married, my wife's sister and her husband wanted to go to one of these classes. So I took them out door knocking, and they loved it. They said, this is great, this is what I'm going to do. And then after it was over, the very first door they went to, they got cussed out. And they went and knocked on a foreclosure door, and they said, hey, would you like to sell your house? And they said, you vulture, you are a buzzard. And they called them all these names, and it devastated them, because during the training, everybody was nice. But you run across one every blue moon, or maybe every blood moon. Did anybody see the blood moon we had? Those come along once in a while. And it's the same with getting cussed out. I told you I'd knocked on 40 doors a month for 30 years, and I only remember getting cussed out twice, and once was through the door. I never saw their face. I mean, somebody was going, get out of my yard. I was going, hey, could I say something? He goes, what? I said, your mouthwash ain't working. I could have got shot. Now, speaking of door knocking, you know, if you're afraid of door knocking, now, you don't ever have to be afraid of door knocking unless you're knocking on foreclosure doors. Those are the people that get upset because they're public. Everybody knows they're in foreclosure. People are driving by taking pictures of their house. Sometimes people are snooping around in their backyard just to see what the house looks like so they can bid on it. And that's why they're upset. I'd be upset too if I was a freak show. Everybody's coming over and taking pictures of my house and going, there's the freaks in foreclosure, you know, and embarrassing you in front of your neighbors. So, but hidden market doors, you're the only one knocking. It's just a typical day for them when someone knocks on their door. Okay. But I told some of my students, I said, if you're afraid of door knocking on foreclosures, the best time to do it is Halloween night. Halloween night. Because then they come to the door smiling. Even people in foreclosure. They come to the door with candy and they're saying, oh, hi. You see, I took my daughter only to foreclosures on Halloween night. She would say, Dad, let's go to this door. I'd say, no, let's go to this one. Because they were in foreclosure. It was a way for me to see. You see, the reason we're afraid of door knockers is we don't know who's going to answer the door and what kind of mood they're going to be in. On Halloween night, they come to the door smiling with candy. And then, one time we were door knocking during December. And it got dark, and I hate door knocking in the dark, but we had one more house to go to. So I told the class, we had a class of 10 people, I said, okay, let's sing Christmas carols. When I knock on this door, everybody starts singing Christmas carols. And they were going, what? I said, yeah, it's okay, we're going to change the words. So we were sitting there, it's Christmas season, a lot of Christmas lights in neighborhoods, and we knock on this door of someone in foreclosure, and a guy comes to the door, and then I told the class, start singing, and they started singing. So then the guy was going, oh, honey, come here, bring the kids, it's carolers. And then they started shooting at us after they found out the words we had changed. Because here's what we were saying, we were going, foreclosure, exposure, keep in peace, keep in peace. All I want is for you to trust me. We don't want you to file bankruptcy. Let us make you a deal. Let us make you a deal. Now, if you believe that, I have oceanfront property in Atlanta outside. All right, so I just thought I'd make sure you guys are awake. All right, so let me show you some pictures of hidden markets. Because I want you to knock on hidden markets, not foreclosures. Now, what happens during my 3-day training is we plot a course of foreclosures just to give us a route to follow. Because then we would all be going, where do we go next? Where do we go? We can't just go driving for dollars. But that's what we're doing, but we're following a course. Now, this course will take us in different neighborhoods, different price neighborhoods. So this first one may be a $50,000 neighborhood. The next one may be a $200,000 neighborhood. The next one might be a $150,000 neighborhood. So we're finding hidden markets in different price neighborhoods by following this course. And we end up with 30 hidden markets. And the ones that are really good deals, I put stars next to. So like this is one of my recent trips. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 really good ones. When I put stars next to it, it tells me to follow up on those first because those are high potentials. Meaning the house may have been vacant. It was it had a lot of repairs needed. The neighbor told us that the guy died, and so I put a star next to it going, follow up on that first. As soon as you get home, find the executor. So, like a neighbor might have said that the daughter comes over occasionally to check on the house, but she lives a long ways away. So therefore, I need to find that daughter because I can't find the owner because the house is vacant and he's dead. So I've got to find that daughter. So those are the kind I put stars next to. Now, let me give you an idea of why this is worth it. You see, when I'm out in the field, I'm writing down address, but there's always someone in the class who puts it on some sort of a spreadsheet, okay? So, I want you to look at some of these houses we find. Now, first of all, I want you to see how long the list is, okay? And 1717 Auburn Drive, it's in disarray. Forest Grove Drive, disarray. Loganwood Avenue, disarray. Greenhaven, vacant, and it's in disarray. And look, by doing our research, we found the owner's name, a separate mailing address to find that owner. So we can send a letter asking to buy a house. We can call them because we found their phone number and their email address. So we attack it from every angle. And notice that one has a star next to it, so it was a really good one. And then this one had 2 stars. It's a probate. The electrical meter was removed. We got an email address for the executor. The guy had died, and we found a separate mailing address for the executor. Now this one was vacant, but it had a truck in the driveway. And this one turned out it was owned, there was a renter living there. But you see, what other method do you know to find all these possibilities in one day? Now, do you think you'll be successful at getting a deal that day if you find that many opportunities in one day? It all comes from being willing to go out. Okay? Now, let's show you some pictures. Okay. By the way, you can ask questions all day long. So anytime you have a question, just raise your hand like you did. I'll be glad to answer. You're not interrupting. You're here to learn. So I don't want anybody walking out of here without their questions answered. Okay, let's see.
Just real quick, you're saying send out letters and stuff. Do you have a sample letter?
Yeah, I'll show it to you. Okay. Akron, Ohio. Does anybody ever heard of Akron?
Yes.
Well, what I'm showing you is pictures of houses in different states that we got under contract during my trainings. And this is one in Akron. Now, every house on the street, the people had pride of ownership. But while we were out in the field, we ran across this house, and the grass hadn't been cut, the bushes are overgrown, but look at the house. It doesn't look that bad, does it? But this is classed as a hidden market property. Now, we don't know if it's vacant or not when we see it. So we knock on the door, okay? If nobody answers, and we're convinced nobody's inside, then I'll look. I will look in the window to see if it's vacant. But there's a lot of vacant homes in the US that still have furniture in them. I'm gonna prove that too.
And squatters.
Now, I know that this little poster on the door is, most people think that's a bank.
No, inspectional services.
Now, that's a smart thing, because if you see things with posters on the door, I want you to stop and knock and find out if it's vacant and read the sign. Now, this sign is not a bank-owned property. I'll show you what that sign says in a minute. I'll show you a close-up. But what happened is when we see this house, what's the first thing we should do if we look in the window and see it's vacant? What? Try to open the door. Sean, you're an agent. Okay, so the first thing that I do is I know that that's an opportunity if I can just contact the owner. So I need to find out the owner and where he is. So the first thing I do is knock on the neighbor's door and say, hey, do you know what's going on with that house over there? And that's usually when they say, oh, the guy died. He has a daughter that lives in Kentucky, but she's the only, kids that I know thought he had. Well, obviously, I need to find that daughter, right? So I asked the neighbor, I'll say, do you know how to get in touch with her? No, but she comes by here once a month. So what would I do? Leave a note on the doorstep. I'll show you what I leave. And also, I'm going to try and find her through skip tracing type methods, which I'll show you today. And I'm going to contact her and say, listen, do you want to sell that house? Now, do you think she would? Absolutely. If she lives in Kentucky, she's going to want to do it. So anyway, whatever we did, we got this house under contract, and legal advertising, because I don't live in Akron, I usually turn these over to the students. And the students don't have any money either. So now I've got to wholesale this, so I put this note on the door. Now that is legal. I cannot put a for sale sign in the yard. I can't even put a note that says house for sale. But I can say, for information about this house, call Tony. Now, so if any other investors or wannabes are driving through this neighborhood, they're going to stop and read that sign, aren't they? So if they call me and say, hey, what's going on with that vacant house? I'll say, well, I'm trying to sell it. I've got it under contract and I need to sell the contract because I live out of state. Okay, now, that's option one. I want to tell you the 3 options for this house to prove that everybody in this room can do this business. If you don't have any money, and you don't have any friends, and you don't have any resources, and you file bankruptcy every day you've been alive, you can still do this deal if you're willing to contact the owner and get it under contract. Because if you get it under contract, somebody either in the class will buy it from you, or somebody will buy the right to buy that house from you. So that's called option number 1. Option number 2 is to, if you do have friends, or you do have access to money, or you have your own, go ahead and buy it and close on it. Take title to it. And then cut the grass and trim the bushes, and all of a sudden you're going to make a hell of a lot more money than you would have in option 1. And that's, some people, I think they call that wholetailing. I don't know if that's the right word, but that's where you just take title to it and do a little bit of work, but you leave enough work for another investor. Now, why do you want to leave work for another investor to give him a way to make profit? Because if you cut the grass and then the investor comes and looks, he's going to go, oh, this is not a little paint and carpet. It's a good deal. So therefore, you can make a higher price. Now, another thing is you're selling it to a cash buyer, so there's no red tape at the closing. Cash buyers provide smooth closings. Now, a third option is you could go ahead and cut the grass, trim the bushes, and fix up the house all the way. And then you would make more money probably, but what I like to do is list them with real estate agents to get multiple offers if possible. At least a good agent can get top dollar. Okay? So, and it exposes it on the MLS. And the reason I love the MLS when I'm selling homes is because people can access that MLS from all over the world now. It's not just a local thing. So someone from California may end up buying this house off of the MLS. Okay. So those are your three options for making money. So that proves that everybody in this room can do something. If you have access to money and you want to make more money and share it with your friend who's putting up the money, then do option 2 or 3. But see, if you do option 3, usually it's a first-time home buyer getting an FHA loan. FHA is going to come do their own inspections. And they'll give you a punch list, and then you have the red tape of them getting a loan. So options 1 and option 2 is you're selling to cash buyers, which makes smooth closings. Does that make sense? Okay, here is Boston, Massachusetts. That's in Boston, the local investors club or Real Estate Investors Association kept saying, Tony, homes sell in Boston for above asking price, sometimes $80,000 above appraisal. It's impossible to get good deals here. So they invited me up to take their students out in the field, and we found this house. I don't care how good the area is and how much homes are selling for, there's always hidden markets. So we found this house. The house is in good shape, but obviously the person that owns it must not be able to afford $25 because he could hire someone to cut that grass, couldn't he? I mean, folks, I want you to know that if you see high grass, then that's not, I mean, a lot of times my students will say, oh, that's how we are here. We're just lazy. We don't cut our grass. But see, really, that's a sign something's going on in that person's life. They either lost their job, their dog left them, their wife left them, somebody died, or they're going through a divorce. So, my theory was right, because what I did is I went across the street and knocked on the door and said, hey, what's going on with the house across the street? Oh, his wife died. He lives on Martha's Vineyard, and they would go back and forth to their vacation home a lot, but his wife died, and he's been depressed ever since, and he's just left it. He's never been back. I said, can you put us in touch with him? She said, all I can tell you is he's in Martha's Vineyard. So I had to do all my research to find this guy, and he did want to sell it. His dream was ruined when his wife died. So he didn't feel the need to have that house anymore. And that's why he didn't care. There's another one in Boston. So this is where they say it's impossible to get good deals in Boston. And look at this one, man. If you look real close, that's peeling paint. The grass hadn't been cut, the bushes are over. I couldn't see, when I'm out in the field, I don't know if these are occupied or vacant. So I knock to find out. And that tells me what strategy to use. And this one turned out to be occupied. At first, I knocked on the door and the people said, no, I don't want to sell it. But I left my number, I talked them into taking my flyer. And then when I did the research, I found out there were liens and the taxes were behind. So that gave me a reason to go back and talk to the person and say, are you aware that your taxes are behind? And I'm worried that they're gonna take your house away. Are you sure you don't want to sell it? And she was more willing to talk because I was by myself this time. And so she wanted me to make an offer, but then she had some strange boyfriend who, when I made an offer, he talked her out of it. And that house probably is going to end up getting lost because some weird boyfriend talked her out of selling us the house. Probably because he didn't have a place to live. He was probably mooching off of her. Yeah. Okay, this is another one in Boston. Now, folks, do you ever see houses like that in Ohio?
Yes.
Okay. Now look at this. That looks like a jungle. But usually there's a reason for this. People just don't let houses get like this unless something's going on. So that tells me the owner is distressed. So you see, the local Boston people said there's no way to find deals in Boston. It's because all they ever hear about on the news is homes are selling for $80,000 above appraisal.
They're only
But-
looking on the MLS.
Right. West Virginia. Now, you see this little sticker on the door. If this grass was perfectly cut, and look at the roof looks good, the house looks good. Now, what's made it a hidden market is the grass, but if this grass was perfectly manicured, I would have still stopped at this house because of this little sticker right here. Can anybody tell me what that little decal says?
I'm gonna guess it's the property management thing for the bank.
Close.
Reservation.
Close. I mean, it basically is. But what exact words does it say? What? No.
It
That's
says
close.
Concerns about the property, call the number.
contact such and such number.
Yeah.
It says, this property has been found to be vacant or abandoned. If it is not vacant, please call your mortgage company immediately. Because if you don't call us within 3 days, we're gonna change the locks and winterize your house. You see, I have a close-up of this. There it is. That's a close-up of that little sticker. That's how big it is. It says, we found this property to be vacant or abandoned. This information will be reported to the mortgage holder. The mortgage holder has the right and duty to protect this property. The property may be rekeyed or winterized within 3 days. And in big words, it says, if this property is not vacant, contact Safeguard Properties. Now, if you call this number, will they help you buy this house? No, they won't. Okay. Now, here's why that sticker, you'll see that on different houses, is because if the bank is not receiving mortgage payments, they hire Safeguard Properties, which is a, what do you call it?
Property preservation.
Yeah, property preservation company. They call them and they say, can you go knock on the door and tell us if the people still live there, because we're not getting any payments. So that company, they knock on the door and they try to determine if it's vacant, but they don't know for sure, because usually there's stuff in there. So they put the sticker on, so if the homeowner comes home and sees this sticker, they're going to call and say, no, it's not vacant, don't change my locks. But they do usually when they put the sticker on, it is vacant, because they don't want to make a mistake. So, okay, so just remember, when you're riding around, if you see a sticker like this, whether the grass is cut or not, just remember that's a sign. So when I'm driving, I'm spotting these things a mile away. Now look at this house in Chicago. I have no idea if anybody lives there. This is part of your door knocking. If you see a house like this, you can write down the address and send a letter. But I want to know if it's vacant or not, because then I know how to pursue it. So I knock on the door, and if no one answers or I don't hear a dog barking, I look in the windows to see if it looks vacant. Now this is not that bad. The grass is really not that high. It just looks like crap. By the way, if you knock on a door and it looks, you know, and you say, hey, I'm looking to buy a home in this neighborhood, would you be interested in selling yours? Once in a blood moon, they'll say, what made you come to my house? And what do you say?
I'm just looking at houses in the neighborhood,
That's true.
walking.
Yeah, that's right. What I say is, I love your house. I say, I love the style of your house. Now they think I'm talking about ranch or Cape Cod or something like that, but I'm talking about looks like crap. That's the style I like. So I'm not lying when they say, why did you come to my house? Instead of saying because it looks like crap, I say I love the style of your house, because that's the style I like. Okay. Tampa, Florida. Now the house isn't bad, but see, here's the deal. Look at that. That grass is 2 feet high. They can't afford $35 to get someone to cut the grass. Now in Tampa, there's a lot of what they call snowbirds. People that move, you know, live down in Florida during the winter. But snowbirds, if they can't afford to keep the grass cut, something's going on in their life. So even nice houses could end up as hidden markets. Now, if you ever see a sign that says garage sale, you should stop and ask the people if they would be interested in selling the house. I've started doing that years ago, and I've gotten some deals that way. I started doing it years ago because when I would buy a foreclosure, and then I would be cleaning out the house, I'd always find a garage sale sign somewhere in the house, maybe the garage. And it's because even people that are about to go into foreclosure, they will have a garage sale just to start getting rid of some of their crap. So that could be a sign that someone's getting ready to sell their house, whether they're going into foreclosure or not. Even if it's someone that's just moving, they may have a garage sale before they ever put it on the market. So you can get some as-is deals by doing that. Same with U-Hauls. If ever you see a U-Haul in the driveway, stop and ask them, are you moving in or moving out? Yep. Oh, we're moving out. Would you like to sell? They just might sell it before it becomes public. Now, Bellevue, Washington. Who knows where Bellevue, Washington is? It's near what city?
Yeah.
Seattle. Now, it's one of the high dollar areas of Seattle. Seattle is another place where they said, you can't find good deals in Seattle. Homes sell, they're in such demand, they sell for top dollar, outrageous prices, you can't find good deals. But we want you to come show us how. So I went up there, we went out as a class, doing some door knocking, and this is one of the houses we found in Bellevue. And Bellevue is one of the high dollar areas of Seattle. The more impossible. Now you see those posters on the door, what do they say? I don't know, I still can't read them. It says, attention property residents, the foreclosure process has begun on this property, which may affect your right to continue to live in this property. Duh.
I don't think they're in there.
Well, actually, they're not even living in it. It says 90 days or more after this date, of this notice, this property may be sold at foreclosure. So what do we know so far? We think, when we see posters, we think it's a bank-owned house. Not always true. This house is still owned by the owner. So what would we do if we want to buy it? We got to find the owner before the bank foreclosed. But do you think he would be motivated to sell?
He might be.
I would think so. If you're the owner of the property, the purchaser will be entitled to possession 20 days after the sale. Under Washington law, if you're renting this property, the new property owner may give you a rental agreement or provide you with a 60-day notice to vacate. If the loan being foreclosed falls within certain guidelines, you may also have additional rights, but you may want to contact a lawyer. You know, it's so funny. Who in foreclosure can afford a lawyer most of the time? There's the back of the house. You know what we found is this guy, somebody was rehabbing and they ran out of money. Because look at that brand new door on the back. Some kind of graffiti. Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Now, you see, in Cherry Hill, it's against the city ordinance to knock on doors. You have to have a license to knock on doors. Yeah, only in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. The rest of the state, you're okay. But just in Cherry Hill, you cannot knock on doors unless you have a license to do so. It's called a solicitor's license. I said, I'm not selling, I'm buying. They said, you still have to have a license to even knock. But you can find houses like this that are vacant, owned by banks. So what we did in Cherry Hill, that is like right on the Philadelphia line. So what we did is we found a whole bunch of hidden markets in Cherry Hill before lunch, and then we went over to Philadelphia to do the door knocking because it was legal there. Okay. So we did a good thing in Cherry Hill. As a matter of fact, the club leader lived in Cherry Hill, and he wanted to buy any houses we got under contract. He wanted to buy the contracts.
We have neighborhoods, small towns around here that have those same ordinances.
They do?
Yeah, I live in Vandalia, and they have an ordinance.
Yeah. Well, what you do in an area like that is, you know, you just write down addresses like Maria does. Send them a letter or contact them other ways. Okay.
How do you find out, like, when you just go into a neighborhood, right, if you're doing your plotting your course or whatever for foreclosures, I mean, is that a city code that you can go check, or
Yeah.
that you typically do, or?
Yeah, what I've done is I've just gone to the courthouse or called them and said, listen, I just want to find out, is there any ordinance? Now, you can Google it too, but something always may not come up, and you may not feel that you've gotten the whole answer. So I call the courthouse, and sometimes the person that answers doesn't know, so they put you in contact with someone else. And you just say, listen, I want to know if I can leave flyers on doorsteps, because, you know, pizza companies do that, and landscape companies, they leave flyers on doorsteps. So I called to see if there's a way I can leave flyers on doorsteps, and if they say that's fine, then I say, what about if I knock on the door? Is there any kind of ruling? And most of the time they'll say, if it says no soliciting, that's what it means. So it's only a door-to-door thing if it says no soliciting. Okay. Now, I've seen some weird things at doors. I've seen it where right on the front door, there's a pistol, a 6-gun pointing straight at you on a picture. And it says, "Nothing in this house is worth dying for," or something, you know. But, you know, or it'll say something like, "Trespassers will be shot, survivors will be shot again." So I don't knock on those type of doors, but I do leave a flyer.
Tom, if you're in Vandalia, you don't have to check on the ordinance. By the time you get to the third door, the local police will let you know.
Really, they're that strict on that up there?
Yeah, and
Really?
people will call that quickly. Yeah.
Wow.
David will call you on
I mean, yeah, I guess they do that in Oakwood too, but
Does anybody know of any other neighborhood around here that has that ordinance,
Nope, nothing tonight.
other than Vandalia? Probably Oakwood?
Any kind of gated community is not a good idea either. Here's why. Because
Don't trespass.
one time, there was a foreclosure in a gated community, and so we were going, and a car went through the gate, and the gate just stayed open, so we went in. And when we knocked on the door, the owner I asked, "Would you be interested in selling the house?" They said, "How did you get in?" "You followed a car in, didn't you?" "That's trespassing, I'm calling the police." And they got on the phone, they were calling the police, and so the police wouldn't come, but they were mad. So, you know, just the way I look at gated communities, it's not worth trespassing. Now, if you're an agent, they'll let you in the gate, but you gotta, I mean, if there's not a guard there, then how do you get in? So I just, you know, when I'm doing my classes, my students are always gung-ho saying, "Oh, there's a way to get in, let's follow the cars." But I have to be the good example. I have to say, no, we cannot trespass. And then sometimes when we go to doors, I'll knock on the door, and then the students are going around back trying all the doors, opening windows or using tools or something. They're saying, "I can get us in." And I'll say, "We're not allowed." I have to keep you guys in line.
What kind of fines or penalties would be involved if you are door knocking?
Oh.
Just door knocking, not doing anything.
I don't think, it's just like if you ever put something in the mailbox, you get a couple of warnings. It's not that serious in my opinion, but don't do it to find out. But I know that I've had the police called on me a couple of times when I've been door knocking on homes with no for sale signs. I mean, not occupied, but vacant ones. There's always a neighbor. There's a Gladys Kravitz in every neighborhood. So one time we were all standing in the front yard talking about a house and how we would improve the curb appeal. And a lady came from across the street going, "Who are y'all? What are y'all doing?" And we said, "Well, we're thinking about buying this house." She goes, "I saw y'all snooping around, so I called the police, but they wouldn't come because they asked me if there was a no trespassing sign." And I said, "No." So they said, "We're not coming." And then there was another time that, oh, and by the way, that lady, I kept saying, "Hey, we're looking to buy a house. Do you want to sell yours? Do you know anybody who might want to sell?" And we ended up building rapport. Now, one time we were in front of a house and the police did come. And they said, "What are y'all doing here?" And I said, "Well, we're thinking about buying this house. We're looking to buy a house in the area." He said, "What makes you think this house is for sale?" Because there was no for sale sign. I showed him my list. I said, "Well, you know, I got it off the internet, and, you know, it's part of our course." And he was looking at this going, "Where can I get a copy? Can you subscribe to this?" And the next thing you know, I thought he was going to go with us the rest of the day and escort us because he wanted to learn. So, you know, out of 30 years, I've never really got in any major trouble. You just tell them the truth. Tell them the truth. Now, we do smart things, you see. If you break in the house, you're going to get in trouble. That's trespassing. If the door, sometimes these bank properties Only a few of them, but if it's a FHA or a government home, it actually says no trespassing. So if you go in, you're really breaking the law. So be smart about it. And a lot of houses, you'll see the doors are wide open and you can go in.
And then you find squatters living in it.
Oh, yeah. There has been times where we've gone in and found either a dog sitting, that squatted in the house, or people.
Take your Trump stickers off your bumper before you go in.
So, anyway. But the thing is don't do anything unethical, and you'll last for the rest of your life in real estate. 2 questions.
Yeah, I go to house before, nobody inside. I walk look front the door and looking back the door. The back door sometimes not locked, so I just hurry up. I stay even not 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I saw that if some people see me in the back, but because police, I'm left already, so I hurry up.
Yeah. Well, we want to set good examples, but I've had students call me and say, hey, that when they were in a house, they were caught by the police, and the police asked them what you're doing in the house, and he said, look, I'm an investor, and I want to find a house to buy, and this looks like a good one, so I wanted to see how much work it needs. So because he told the truth, the policeman was looking to see if there was any chance that he's a burglar trying to steal things. And the policeman was convinced he was really looking to buy a home. He had business cards that says, we buy houses. So the policeman let him go. But somehow the guy left something in the house, so the policeman said, okay, well, just to make everything safe, let's get out of here. And then the police drove back by 10 minutes later, and he went back in to get something he had left. I forgot what it was. But then the policeman was not very happy. So that's stupid, If the police, first of all, always tell the truth, because we really aren't. What they're looking for is, are you there to steal something? Now, my golf buddy is a real estate agent for all the HUD and Fannie Mae houses in my area. They list with this guy. So when they repossess a house, he has to go inform the owner that the government owns your house. Now you got to get out, so that's dangerous too. But if they've abandoned, he has to break in and change the locks. But I said, Paul, one time we were heading for the golf course, and he goes, I just got to stop by this house and secure it. And we stopped at this old dilapidated house. I said, gee, Paul, you think I could make an offer on this? He goes, you'll never get it at the price you offer. He goes, they'll get top dollar for this house. I said, there's holes in the roof, there's holes in the walls. I said, why do you think they'll get top dollar? He said, because they offer $100 down payment to first-time home buyers. Now, isn't that what caused the crisis last time? No skin in the game? The government is doing that now. So they get top dollar for all their junky houses because they let you get it for $100 down payment. Yes.
Tom, Joe's definition of a goofy liberal is somebody who can tell what didn't work, so they add money and do more of it.
Okay.
They're doing it again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
okay, so one other thing about this topic is I asked that agent, I said, what if when you got here, you found someone inside, like an investor? If an investor was walking through the house and you showed up, what would you do? Would you call the police? He goes, no. He goes, I don't have time to wait for the police to get here. I don't have time to detain him. So he goes, if he's carrying a microwave, then I will call the police. But he goes, if it's an investor just looking at the house, I'm going to tell him to get out, but I'm not going to arrest him or call the police. So that's why if you end up being that type of person, I don't do it and I don't recommend it, but if you do go into a house, you're taking chances and you're making us all look bad. Because us investors are good people. We actually help the community. We save people from foreclosure. We help the community, and we're constantly trying to prove that to to Washington, D.C. Because they keep passing all these laws, taking away our ways of doing things, because they hear one or two horror stories and they think we're all like that. But I'm here to tell you, all the foreclosures I ever bought, those people thanked me. They said, man, we would have lost our homes if it wasn't for you. You gave us money to start our lives over. And so we can't do things that are going to ruin it for the rest of us. We've got to be ethical. Okay? All right. Now, I want to show you this one, and then we'll take a break.
So did the boat come with that house?
Oh, let's go back and look. Oh, there's the boat. You know, that's what I do when I see things. I put a clause in that says sail to include the boat in the yard. You know.
Actually, by the wood, the house comes with it.
Yeah. Okay, this is Phoenix, Arizona. There is no high grass in Phoenix, is there?
There's no grass.
There's no grass at all.
Needs gravel.
Now, first of all, does anybody see why I stopped at this and classed this as a hidden market?
You can see through it.
Yeah, you can see through it. And the yard is completely desolate. Usually they've got gravel or a few decorative plants or something.
Construction
Yeah.
debris.
Well, there's one surefire thing that nobody's mentioned yet.
2 columns are bent.
Is there something on the door?
Yeah, is that a?
No? You can't
Well,
see.
there is something on the door. But what really caught my
What's all
eye,
over the shutter?
what really caught my eye is just to the right of the front door.
On that shutter. Oh, that's the mailbox.
That's the sign. That is a sign that it's a vacant house. Okay. Now remember, I don't want to mislead you. The hidden market is not vacant houses. It's part of it, but in a minute, after we take a break, I'm going to start showing you occupied houses and why I knock on those doors, okay? All right, but this is obvious. Now, what we're going to do is take a break. Let's do 11 minutes and 9 seconds. Okay. And then, when I get back, if you have any questions, I'll answer them. Because sometimes I got to go to the restroom, and sometimes people say, hey, I've got a question.
54.
Any questions on what we've covered so far? All right. Now, I want to show you, we've seen a lot of vacant type houses. Those are hidden markets, but also hidden markets are occupied too. You see, the door knocking parts of my classes is where we have to, we want occupied houses so we can actually talk to owners and make deals. So when I'm out in the field, I find vacant houses, but here's an example of a house that's occupied. There's a nice car in the driveway, but they're not taking care of the yard and the bushes, so I knock on that door. So any house that looks distressed in any neighborhood, I knock on every door. That is a possibility. Because remember, every neighborhood has people who are going through a divorce or loss of loved one, loss of income, loss of job, their dog left. So if there's no pride of ownership, it makes me think there could be one of those things going on in their life. And sometimes I'm wrong. But I knock on every door to find that one. Because folks, your goal is not to really find 10 deals today. Your goal is if I could at least get one deal today, it was worth going out. And if you do that once a week, you get 4 deals a month. And you can double that according to your own business savvy, meaning you could bring in more people to, while you're doing this here, somebody else in your organization could be doing the exact same thing in a different zip code. And that increases. And if you had a third person in a different zip code that day, you're getting 100 hidden market addresses per day, you see. So you can make it as big as you want. I have done those things for 30 years, but now I'm down to just maintaining, you see. So I do it myself now because the people that I used to hire to go do this in other zip codes eventually learned the business so well they just became their own investor. Okay. Now this one's not that bad, but Nashville is an area, but it's occupied, but I knock on those doors too. And see, sometimes what happens is if you say the right words, they want to hear more, so they invite you in. And we sit down in their living room or their kitchen table, and we end up making some kind of an offer. Now, this is in Phoenix, Arizona, and by gosh, there is grass. And nobody's mowing it. So that's a good one. Now, this is also in Phoenix, but there is all the stuff that was inside this house. You see all that stuff? That's everything. Now, obviously, that is probably a landlord eviction, probably. We don't know if it's a bank eviction or a landlord, but I pursue that. Here's why. Because do you realize that if a landlord has just evicted someone, this is the perfect time to ask them if they want to, if they're ready to give it up. They've just been through hell, getting rid of people. I personally hate to evict anybody. I'll do everything I can to avoid it, to work things out. But sometimes you have to do it, and right after you've done an eviction, this is the perfect time to contact that landlord and say, hey, would you like to sell the house in as-is condition? Because what is he faced with? Now he's got to go in and fix it up again, to re-rent it. So imagine this, what if we talk to that landlord, and we say, hey, are you going to fix it up and re-rent it, or would you be interested in selling it in as-is condition? And he says,
Where do I
well,
sign?
he says, I like the income. And then we do a title search and we find out it's free and clear. So I say, what if I could show you how to get income without having to go through this again? You never have to pay taxes again on taxes and insurance. You don't have to deal with evictions or tenants at all. But you still get income. Well, how's that? Well, I noticed your house was free and clear. If you sell me the house with owner financing, you will get monthly payments for the next 30 years. Oh, I'll be dead in 30 years. All right, well, how long would you like to do it? 10 years, maybe? Okay. I'll buy it with owner financing, amortized over 30 years, but I'll give you a balloon payment and pay you off in 10 years, whatever the balance is. So that's good for him because he's getting the income like a pension. But then it's a good deal for us because we're getting a house with no money down, and we owe him say $500 a month, but we rent it for $1,000. And that gives us the money to pay him. And in 10 years, the house goes up in value, so we either sell it or refinance it to pay him off. I just sold one after a 7-year balloon that was owner financed, and I got a check for $90,600 net profit. And that was good. Because during that 7 years, I got the house, no money down, just promised to pay. I rented it out, it was rented for 7 years. And then I had to pay a balloon payment of $155. I sold the house for $263 and paid her $155. So it was a perfect deal. So that's just another opportunity in the hidden market business if you see something like that. Anybody in the room ever done owner financing on the seller side or buyer side?
Yes.
Both? Isn't it the greatest thing? You see, when I first got started in real estate, the going thing to do back in the 80s was to take over loans subject to. But in foreclosure, you have to make up the back payments, so it's easy to borrow $3,000 or $4,000 from somebody. And then you catch up the back payments, take over the loan, and then you fix it up and either refinance it, and you get a big fat check at closing, and then you rent it out. So I built up this big portfolio of rental houses using that technique, but I was getting paid $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 just to take over these loans. So it's an infinite rate of return because I have zero money in these houses and other tenants are making the payments for me. So, and I profited by buying them. So that was my portfolio of rentals. Today, if I'm out in the hidden market and these 30 or 40 houses I find, some of these are free and clear, so I offer to buy them with owner financing. That's the only way I'll keep a house as a rental today, is if I can get it with owner financing. Because I don't want any more loans in my name, meaning mortgages, but with owner financing, those people never report to your credit bureaus. So therefore, it doesn't ruin your credit score, you see. If I went to a bank and got a loan to buy a rental house, it's on my credit report, and it shows more debt on my end, even though they're rented. In the old days, they would offset your debt with income. But now they don't seem to do it anymore. The banks look, I mean, if your credit score looks at it like you're obligated for 10 mortgages, you know? So owner financing never shows up on your credit report. So therefore, that's the only way I'll keep something as a rental today, is if I can get it with owner financing. Now, you see this house? Look, that grass used to be high because you see all the clumps. A neighbor probably got sick of looking at it, but then if you look closer, there's those posters in the windows. So I knew that house was vacant. This is a sign of the hidden market, all these weeds growing up through the concrete. Boarded up windows. You should always check in. The grass is cut, the bushes are trimmed, but why are the windows boarded up? I don't know, but I'm at least going to investigate and contact the owner. I don't ever drive by a house like this and assume anything. I don't ever say, oh, they probably don't want to sell. I'm going to contact them just to see. If you're in the real estate business, every house is an opportunity. Every house. And if you start to focus that every house is an opportunity, you're going to find yourself with a lot of deals. Okay? And remember, if you're good at finding deals, you'll never have to use your own money. Maria, her husband's a doctor, has plenty of money. Maria had plenty of money. But she never uses her money because so many investors want to back her. Even today, I still use investor money. Let me tell you another technique why I use investor money. I've got plenty of money. But your spouse never wants you to risk your own money. That was the dumbest thing when I got married. My wife all of a sudden said, hey, why are you taking $200,000 out of the account to buy this house? Well, because that's what I do. And she was a little nervous that I'm taking all these risks. But because I'm good at finding deals, every investor in town wants to back me, and so do all my friends and relatives. Even my wealthy family members, they see that I'm a good risk, so they want me to use their money. Now, here's why I do, because right now I'm rehabbing a house, and we're putting $60,000 in repairs. I bought the house for $106,000, and I'm going to sell it for $300,000, but I got to put $60,000 in it. So right now I'm rehabbing. If I borrow the $60,000 from an investor and offer to pay them back, say $65,000 or $67,000 in less than 90 days, that's a good return for them. They know I'm good. So I can use their money to buy materials and hire people, but because I'm on the job, I can take some of that money and pay myself every Friday for being on the job. You see, if I use my own money, then I have no income, just outgo. So by using other people's money, I can pay myself for supervising or being on the job or doing certain things. Like for instance, if I said, Sean, how much would you charge me to paint the inside of this house? $2,000. Well, if I paint the inside, I can pay myself $2,000, can't I? Plus $500 for being on the job. But anyway, whether I'm doing any work or not, I've got that money to either hire people or do some of the work myself. So I'm actually getting income every Friday that I bring home to the family and say, look, here's for groceries, here's for, utilities. It makes your spouse happy. So that's one of the benefits of using other people's money when they're begging you to take it. Now, the reason they're begging us to take it is because they know we're good at finding deals. They could be too, but they don't want to go out and do what we do. Yes?
So you borrow money from an investor, and then you're paying them back an interest-only loan, basically, that you're paying you some money that you're taking a weekly draw out.
Yeah.
For your
So I'm borrowing money for rehab, but because I'm out there almost daily,
Do you figure at adding a little bit into your budget then, knowing that you're going to pull some money out?
You could,
for a little bit,
how many of
but
you
then
know?
that kind of.
Well, have you ever seen my brother speak at this group? You know that him and I are the masters at doing $60,000 worth of work for $35,000. And that's how we do it. We do some things ourselves, unskilled labor ourselves, because there's so many things on the rehab of a house that if you pay someone, they charge you a lot of money. And even my own rental houses, if a tenant calls and says, hey, my hot water handle in my shower is stripped out and I can't turn on my hot water, I go see it first, and instead of calling a plumber who would charge $300, I go to Home Depot and buy that valve and unscrew it, screw it back in. It costs me $6 instead of $300. So I do that with my rehabs too. Now, not all of you probably relate to that, but some of us could use our dads. So, like, what's your name?
Kim.
Kim. Hi, Kim.
My dad's 87.
Oh, okay. Well, I bet you he knows how to change a valve.
Yes, he does.
Or your brother does,
Yeah.
or your cousin, So you could say, hey, would you put this valve in for me? Go on YouTube, it'll show you how to do it.
YouTube is the best. That's what
I know. I don't even hire someone to fix my car anymore. I needed a new radiator on my truck. I went on YouTube and they show you exactly how to do it. So I bought a radiator, undid some screws, hooked up some pipes. I got a radiator, saved myself $400. But you know, I just do things like that. So whether you're handy or not, you know someone who is handy, get them on your team. The greatest thing that happened to me in the last 2 deals, I hired a couple of day laborers, and they were the greatest workers. They over-earned their money. And I found out they can do anything. They can do brickwork, they can do roofing, they can do painting, they can do anything you ask them to do. And folks, they're rehabbing my house right now while I'm standing here, and that is a great feeling. But they work for $130 a day, and they're worth it. So it's $260 for the 2 of them, but they get $10,000 worth of work done in one day. So what a great thing! Yes.
Do you want to sell them?
Said day laborers. How did you find these 2 individuals?
Well, I found
That's
them,
his brother's story.
They hang out in front of Home Depot, just looking for a day's work. And so I lucked out one day. I picked these 2 guys, and they turned out to be so good that I keep them busy all the time.
There are some agencies that do that too.
Yeah. All right. What's some of the agencies for the rest of the group? Tell us an agency.
It's called workforce, and they hire a bunch of people on a daily basis.
Yeah.
They even transport them to your site.
Wow.
They pick them up at the end of the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what would be the cost of that?
Probably anywhere from $10 to $15 an hour.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So did he tell you the name?
Can that be just like you, a person? Because when I had a landscape company, I used to hire people like that, but you actually had to be a business. I couldn't be, just Tom out here, local homeowner, and hire a couple guys to come out and work on my house like that. I had to be like a business.
Right. If you have an LLC, you're a business.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. But that's how, it's like if you don't have an LLC and you just have a couple rentals,
Get an LLC.
and you want to get some guy, what?
Get an LLC.
Well, I'm just saying, if you don't,
Okay.
and they don't want to mess with it.
Yeah. All right. Well, whatever it takes to
Get a
do it
letter.
legal.
Put it on
Just
there.
stay legal.
Yeah.
Okay, now this particular house, it was in good shape, but this was the house that stood out on the whole street. And there may not be any problems with the people, but at least I'm gonna knock. There are gonna be times that you knock and they say, no, we love it here. We wouldn't sell, we're gonna die here. And then I say, well, here's my card, give it to your relatives. Okay, so, anyway, so let's see. There's another house, the grass is cut, but it's a vacant property because of that sticker. That is the exact same, that green sticker. Now this is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Now folks, there's something about Green Bay and Milwaukee. All the houses have pride of ownership. It is hard to find a distressed house. Everybody up there seems to take care of their yards, which I don't understand, because it's always cold. Who wants to work in the yard? Anyway, but this house, when I saw that sticker, even though the bushes are beautiful, the grass is cut, I said, something's going on. I went up to read that notice. Now, I'm going to be real. When I walked up to that door to read the notice, if somebody starts looking out the window going, who's coming to our door, I'm going to knock. I'm really going up to read the notice, but if someone's in there or a dog starts barking, I'll knock and I'll say, hey, I'm looking to buy a home in the neighborhood, would you want to sell? Even if that sign says, UPS, please leave packages by the back door. Sometimes they say stuff. But that particular green notice says the exact same thing as this. This house was found to be vacant or abandoned. But up in Wisconsin, It just happens to be a big green notice instead of a sticker like this. Even in Hawaii, there's hidden markets. Matter of fact, folks, there are more hidden markets in Hawaii than there is in the mainland. I don't know how many of you have ever driven through neighborhoods, but just to give you an example, have you ever watched Dog the Bounty Hunter? Well, have you seen some of the neighborhoods he goes in Hawaii? That's what all the neighborhoods seem to look like, except there's some exclusive neighborhoods like this. But I found so many hidden markets in Hawaii, and all of them have a good view of the ocean somewhere. It may be a long way away, but you have a view. Now this one, the ocean is right here and right here. That's a lagoon. And this is an L-shaped house, and if you go around the back, there's a swimming pool overlooking that blue lagoon. And it's just a beautiful opportunity. And this, we talked to the neighbor, and I was with another guru, because me and him were out in Hawaii speaking at a convention, and we decided to go snorkeling. But we drove through a couple of neighborhoods, and we ended up getting this house under contract, but the other guru, I let him have it. And but here's what happened. We went and knocked on the neighbor's door and said, what's going on with this house? And in the same situation as I told you on another house, the guy's wife died. They were going to retire and move here. He was fixing the house up, but when she died, he never came back. It sat like this for a year. The neighbor told us how to get a hold of him, and he never wanted to come back because his dream was ruined of retiring here. But because his wife died, he didn't want to come anymore. So we helped him out by taking it off his hands. Now, there's vacant homes with cars in the driveway. I drove by this house. I was rehabbing a house down the street, and I drove by it many a times. But one day it stood out that there is no tag on that car. So there's no license plate tag. So I walked up to the front door and I noticed both front tires were flat, so I knew that car had been sitting for a long time. I knocked on the door, no one answered, so I looked in the windows and it was vacant. And here's what happened. I did some research and I found out it was I found the owner's name, and the tax bill was going to the vacant house. So I sent a letter anyway, but I also found out that the owner's name happened to be a partner in a major law firm. So I called that law firm and I said, hey, can I speak to so-and-so? So they finally put me through to him. And I said, hey, I was wanting to see if you're the owner, and would you be interested in selling that house over on Sumter Drive? He said, oh, that's not my house, that's my son's house. He's got the same name as me, but the sucker just abandoned it and moved to Florida. He goes, I wish you could talk some sense into him, because he's just going to walk away and let the bank have it. And he goes, that's not good for my reputation. So he wanted me to contact his son to see if he would sell it before the bank took it. So I said, how do I get a hold of him? He gave me the number, and he says, don't tell him I gave it to him. So I said, okay. So I called. Now, if his son would have said, how did you get the number? I'd have said, your dad gave it to him. Because that's what lawyers do to me. They say, yeah, we won't do that. Okay. Okay, so his son, what he said, hell, there's really no equity in it. That's why I'm walking away from it. I said, well, we could at least try a short sale. What do you got to lose? So we did. We submitted a short sale, and the bank tied it up for 6 months and then rejected the short sale. So it went back to the bank. But I gave it a try. Now, this is a good one. See, in the hidden market, every time we go out, at least 2 of these are because someone died. Every weekend, I get at least 2 or 3 that somebody died. Here's how this one worked. That house doesn't look bad. The way this one came about is I saw a distressed house in a different neighborhood. I knocked on the door. And the guy answered. I said, hey, I'm looking to buy a house in this neighborhood. Would you be interested in selling yours? He said, it's not my house, it's my brother's house. I said, do you think he'd be interested in selling it? I might still let you rent it from me. And I said that because I didn't want him to not tell me anything because he's worried about his place, you know, to live. But he goes, you'd have to ask my brother. I said, well, how do I get a hold of him? He goes, well, he lives around the corner. And he gave me the address and said, go ask him. So I went and knocked on his brother's door. I said, hey, do you want to sell that house that your brother's living in as is condition? He said, no, I don't want to sell that one, but my mom died, and I'm the executor of her estate. And I need to sell her house, and it needs work. Would you be interested in taking a look? I said, of course I would. So this is his mom's house. And she took fairly good care of it. But when we went inside, the guy, the brother, he showed it to me. And in the kitchen, there was a big hump right in the middle of the kitchen. Big hump. I said, what happened there? He goes, I don't know. But he goes, man, he goes, I'll never be able to sell that house. And I don't have any money to put into it. I don't want to pay for any repairs. So I walked around the foundation, and on the back left-hand corner, there was a huge crack in the foundation. The foundation was about this, it was concrete from here down. And there was this big crack, a zigzag crack, so wide you could actually stick your fingers in it. That's how wide the crack was. So what happened is the back corner had settled, and it caused one of the floor joists to uproot in the middle of the kitchen floor. Now, I know that's not that big of a deal. If you pull up the linoleum and you pull up the plywood, you can cut that joist out and put in a new joist that would be level. And then put plywood back down and flooring. But the crack, how many of you have bought houses with cracks in the foundation? Lots of us. It's no big deal, is it? Most inspectors, they will say a crack is not that big a deal as long as they see evidence that the house is not going to continue to sink. How do they do that? They see if it was pouring rain, is water going under the house or is it going away from the house? If they're convinced that no water is going under the house because of good drainage, they'll say a crack is not that big a deal. Just fix it, you know, fill it in or whatever. Because houses settle. They settle and it's no big deal. That lady lived in that house with that crack for a long time. It didn't hinder her. But the hump probably did. That's probably why she died. She tripped. But anyway, so the funny story about this is I went ahead and made an offer because he thought that floor was major. So I made an investor type offer. Now, if any of you know what I'm talking about, that's a low offer. So I offered $80,000. The house is worth about $160 after repairs. So I offered $80, and he said, "Oh man," he was going, "I was hoping to get at least $95." I said, "Well, I can't pay $95." I said, "I can pay $80. If that works for you, give me a call." So I had walk-away power. Now the reason that I wasn't really willing to negotiate, I was about to go to California for 3 weeks. And when you go to California for 3 weeks, you're not thinking about nothing on the East Coast. It's a totally different world out there. And I knew I had that big project to deal with out there. So I didn't really want the deal right now. So while I was in California, he kept calling me up saying, "Look, could you pay 90? No, 80. A couple of days later, he called up and said, "How about 86? I said, "No." I said, "I tell you what, put a for sale by owner sign in the yard. I bet you'll get some people that are interested." He goes, okay. A couple of days later, he goes, could you pay 82? I said, no, I told you what I could pay. I said, listen, I'm gonna be out here for a couple of more weeks. I can't be bothered with it. I said, did you put a for sale by owner sign in the yard? He said, no. He goes, I just don't want to show the property. I don't want to do anything. So he called me back and said, I'll take 80 under one condition. I said, what's that? He goes, you take all the furniture with it. I said, what? You'll give me all the furniture if I pay 80? I said, okay. So I went and bought a walk-up airline ticket and flew home for 24 hours just to do this deal. Because the house had a baby grand piano. It had gold records all over the wall because his mother worked at a record company. And so all these gold records, you know, when an artist reaches 500 sales or 500,000 or something, there's a gold record. But I looked at these gold records and I never recognized any of those artists. Except for one. There was one gold record out of about 20 that I did recognize, and it was Janet Jackson. So I kept that one. But what happened is when I went back to California, I got this house. I went ahead and closed on it. And I was just going to fix it up a little bit when I got back from California. But I wanted to get rid of all that furniture, so I hired my sister to do an in-house garage sale. Just anybody that walks through, let them buy whatever they want. If there's anything left, you can have it, because my sister has a lake house. So she made a deal with me. And here's what happened, folks. When I got back from California, I just wanted to wholesale it, and I owned it, so I didn't have to say contract for sale, because I'm doing option 2. So I put a price of $89.5, and I took this flyer to the auction. Before I tell you what happened, I know that some of you are going, is that the same house? Doesn't it look narrow there, and it looks wide here?
That's wide angle lens.
That is the same house. Now, so there's a new technique, folks. I took that narrow picture, and when I put it on the flyer, I had to stretch the picture to fit across the page. So that is the same house, but when you stretch the picture, it makes the house look bigger. So I do that all the time now. No, I'm kidding. As a matter of fact, when I was passing out this at the auction, I said, yeah, it's got a 3-car garage. Because look at the mailbox. You could park a car in that thing. That mailbox is huge. But anyway, that is the same house. It's just that this is a normal picture. And with Microsoft Word, you stretch the picture to fit across the page.
Yeah, those look like 2-car doors, and then they're 1-car garage.
Yeah, it's only a 2-car garage. I was just making a joke that you...
No, but I mean, your picture, it looks like you've got two car openings for those doors.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because it's stretched so much. But see, that is the same house.
I wouldn't have stretched it that.
But it's stretched. So anyway, I pass out this flyer at the auction, and I had a couple of investors that wanted to see it that day. So I told them all to meet me there after the auction. And one investor said, you know, he walked through, I showed him the kitchen, showed him the crack, and he said, you know what, I'll take it. But then some other investor goes, look, I'll give you $115,000 for it. And the other investor was going to give me $89.5. I said, why would you give me $115,000? He goes, because I'm pre-approved for a loan to buy a house to live in, and I want to live in this house. So he goes, I have to, you know, do a loan process, and I know it'll take longer. That's why I'm willing to give you $115,000. So I took his deal. But I never had to fix the kitchen, but he was an investor. So he asked me if I would credit back $10,000 to fix the kitchen. I said, yeah. But here's where I bought the house for $80,000, and here's where I sold it for $115,000. Whoops. Sold it for $115,000, and down here I credited back $10,000, so I netted a check for $105,600. Now remember, I paid $80,000, so I made $25,000 just for option 2. Now, I would have made less than that if I'd have took that first investor's offer. So everybody wins. The realtor made money, the homeowner made money. See, there was a realtor involved when he bought it from me. He brought in a realtor. And so my relatives made money. Everybody made money on that deal. Now, bankruptcy. This was a guy that was in foreclosure. I knocked on his door with a class, and he said, I filed bankruptcy to stop the auction because I just went through a divorce, and he goes, and I want to get rid of all my debts and start fresh. I said, well, would you like to sell the house? He goes, I can't because I'm in bankruptcy. So one of the things I'm going to teach you today is how to do a bankruptcy deal. Because there's a website where I can look at his bankruptcy case. I could look at anybody's bankruptcy case, and I look for a certain document that gives me the right to buy the house. Because he's right, nobody can buy that house until that certain document is recorded. So when someone tells me they're in bankruptcy, and a lot of people in foreclosure, they file bankruptcy to stop the auction, you can still buy the house because the house will end up going to auction anyway. But there's a time before that happens when a document releases the house so that we can buy it. So I'm going to teach you about that. But we ended up looking at his case. Once that document was recorded, we went back to him and asked him if he wanted to sell it. He said, well, they told me they gave it back to the bank. I said, yeah, they gave it to the bank so they could auction it off, but you have the right to sell it before the bank auctions it. As long as the bank is getting paid, then you can buy the house. So here's what happened. The guy, he owed, the value of his house was about $210,000. He owed $118,000. So we offered to give the seller $5,000 because bankruptcy law, a homeowner in the state of Georgia is entitled to the first $5,000 of the equity in his home, even if he is in bankruptcy. The first $5,000. Now I don't know what it is in this state, but you can easily Google it and find out. What is the homeowner's exemption in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy case? So we gave him $500. We took over his loan subject to, because he owed $118,000. Now we called the bank to see what the payoff was because we were going to pay him off. So they were happy. They were going, hell, if we're getting paid in full, we don't want to auction this house off, so thank you. But I said, hey, listen, the house needs work. Is there any way we could just bring the loan current until we fix it up? Then we're going to refinance it and pay you off. So they said yes, and they told us to send a check for $5,000 and something to reinstate the loan. So then one of the students in the class wanted to keep it as a rental, so he rented it out at a $400 positive cash flow. And he was supposed to refinance it, but he waited 2 years. And when he did, he got a cash out refi and pulled out $40,000 2 years later. And he still owns it. Here's another free and clear probate where The grass was high, the bushes were all way overgrown. I knocked on the door, no one answered, it was vacant. I did a title search, which I'll teach you how to do today. I did a title search, and it had a new recent deed had been recorded, but it was called an executor's deed. So what happened is the person that lived there died, and they deeded the house to the daughter because she was the personal representative of his estate. So they deeded the house to the daughter according to the will, and it was called an executor's deed. And it had her address on it, so I contacted her. And I said, would you like to sell the house? She goes, I do, but there's still a ton of work to do. My parents lived there their whole lives. They never updated anything. They never took care of things. It was terrible. So I said, well, could I see the inside? I buy houses like that in as-is condition. She was excited because she thought she was going to have to fix it up. So we went through the house, and she was just pointing out everything wrong. I didn't have to do any of that. I was just going, yeah, cha-ching, yeah, cha-ching, cha-ching. And so after it was over, I made 2 offers. I said, I'll give you $155 cash, or I'll give you $174 if you will owner finance it. She goes, well, obviously I like the higher price, but what is owner financing? And I explained that it's like a pension. I said, you know, if you win the lottery, they ask you, do you want it all up front, or do you want to get payments? I said, you can sell this house and just get monthly income like a pension for the next 30 years. She goes, well, I have a very successful business, but I pay a lot of taxes. So I'm afraid to take in cash right now. So I like the monthly payments, and I like the higher price, and I like the fact that I'm getting 4% interest because I made an offer giving her 4% fixed rate. Now, if she'd have took the $155 and put it in the bank, she would get 1%. So she loves, a good businesswoman, wanted that 4%. So she couldn't sign quick enough. So what happened is she said that she didn't want to do it for 30 years. She wanted to do it for like 5 or 7. So I said, okay, I'll give you a 7-year balloon. So what happened is the 7 years went by, and I got a check for 90. But here's how it went. The value of the house that day was $200,000. I purchased it for $174,400. I didn't have to put any money down. My payments to her are $936 a month for 30 years with a 7-year balloon. I rented the house at $1,250 a month, but I collected $2,500 4 days after I purchased it. I had not even finished painting the kitchen. The renters were knocking the doors down. Everybody wanted to rent it. This guy said, I'll rent it. You don't even have to paint anymore. Just forget it. I need to move in, and here's the money. So he gave me $2,500. My first payment was not due for 45 days after the closing. So the first of the month came around, and I collected another $1,250 rent before my first $900 payment was ever due. Now, so I'm holding $3,700. I have no money in the house. It's already rented with a good, strong tenant, and I've got $3,700, but I got to make a payment of $936. So I got plenty of money to do that, right? It's the greatest technique since Subject 2. But anyway, what happened is the 7 years was up. I sold the house for $263 after the tenant moved out, and I still never painted the inside. Never did. Sold it for $263. That neighborhood became in such demand that people were dying to buy houses in that school district. So today, that house is absolutely beautiful because the guy that bought it from me for $263, I netted $90,600 over that 7 years. I got a check for $90. So what happened, the guy that bought it, he just redid everything, and that house is beautiful today, and it's got a value of like $400,000. Other ways to find probates are read the obituaries. You see, if you read probate notices, other people are doing that too. It's competitive. So here's an idea. What if you were to read the obituaries and you see John Smith III died? You can put his name in the tax assessor website, which I'll even show you how to do that today too. You can put his name in the tax assessor website and it'll tell you his address. What if you drive by his house just to see if it's something you'd be interested in? It's a probate that's coming down the pike. Because if you wait till the probate starts, it could get very competitive. So, now, I said drive by. I didn't say knock on the door. I didn't say show up at the funeral. Although the last house I just bought was a probate, and I went to the funeral. And I saw the daughter, and I couldn't help myself. I said, by the way, you know, she was living in Alabama. His house was in Georgia. So I asked her, I said, hey, and you know, I knew the guy. He was in my Rotary Club thing. But I didn't know him personally. I just knew he was kind of a club member. So I asked the daughter, I said, hey, you know, what are you going to do with the house? And she said, oh, God, it's such a wreck. I went and looked at it. It's a disaster. I said, well, here's my card. I just want you to know when the time comes, if you need to sell it, I can buy it. It wasn't a week later she was calling saying, hey, I want to sell it. Make me an offer. So I made the offer before the probate was finished. And we set a closing, but we had to keep extending it till the probate released it. But I got the deal. $106,000. It's worth $300. But I'm putting 61 in it. But anyway, so if you read the obituaries, don't show up at the funeral and make an offer, but drive by the house. Now, I do have an ethical technique to where you won't be called a vulture. Here's a flyer I like to leave on doorsteps. Now, what if you drove by the person whose name is in the obituary? You find his house, you drive by, and it's vacant. What if you left this flyer on his doorstep, but also leave it on the house to the right and the house to the left, and maybe a couple of houses up the street in either direction? So therefore, it looks like you're flyering the entire neighborhood like a pizza company does, or a landscaper. Therefore, the people, the heirs, won't think you're singling them out. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay? So it's very important you don't just leave a flyer on that doorstep, but do it on the several houses. And that just happens to be one of them. And that you could get a call. They will at least keep your flyer till they figure out what they're going to do. Now, other ways to find these. Is there's something that comes out in the newspaper after someone dies. In the legal notices, there has to be a legal notice that says that John Smith III died. If you owe him money, you need to call and pay up. If he owes you money, you need to file a claim with his estate, and that's called a debtor and creditor notice. Anybody ever seen those? Okay, so that's a good thing, because in that notice it has the executor or the personal representative has their name and address. So what I do is I send letters to all the debtor and creditor notices saying, hey, if you have a house you need to sell to settle an estate, I buy houses in as-is condition. And if someone calls all upset, which very seldom happens, but if they do, I just say, well, if someone calls up and says, man, we haven't even buried the guy yet, and you're already pursuing it. Hey, I just said if you have a house to sell, if you need to sell a house, I buy a house. Do you have a house to sell? No, I don't. Well, then why did you call me? Okay. So, all I know is that all the probates I've ever bought, the people were so grateful, because when someone dies and all of a sudden the family members have to sell that house, clean it out, go through it, probably fix it up. I have found none of them want to fix it up. None of them want to make payments. None of them want to, clean it out. They don't want to do anything. So it's really good deals. Okay, now remember, I'm doing a class on March 30th, 31st, and April 1st.